the guys' night out or something like this? A bunch of the fellas, getting together talking about.
Where's the beer?
You can just.
Clicker? Do you need clicker?
No, I don't need a clicker. I'll click myself. I'm self-clicking. It's okay. That's my startup, the self-clicking technology. It's a pleasure and honor to be in front of you tonight to talk to you guys about pitching to investors. I'll just tell a little bit about myself. I've been working for about the last almost 20 years, helping entrepreneurs do a lot of different things. But one of the primary things I've helped them with is helping them build content for investor presentations. And over the course of that time, I've worked with companies in just about every space. I work mostly with companies that are in the sort of angel to A stage, some B stage, but really at that stage where there's a premium put on making your pitch and your value proposition as understandable as possible to as many people as possible. That makes sense? Mm-hmm. How many of you guys are doing something technical? Raise your hand if it's technical. Of course. God bless you. Yes. I don't know what the rest of you guys are doing. Didn't raise your hand. Scientific, I guess, or something like that, right? Right. Okay, cool. So most often when you're doing something that's technical, scientific, and how many of you guys are engineers, out of curiosity?
Everybody.
All right, there you go. Guys are my people. So it is challenging. How many? One other question before we get going. How many of you are out raising funds right now? Just about everybody. And just so I know, are you raising? Can you just sort of popcorn style? Is it A round, seed round, angel, B round, or
C?
C. Got it. Okay. Anybody else?
No.
What?
Generally early stage, yeah. Some A rounds.
Okay, got it. So I hear C round. I think that's usually pretty big VC rounds, but it's still true that if you don't engage people, no matter what stage you're on, like people are going to start picking up their phones and not paying attention to you and seeing what you have to say. And so my intention is, and I'm going to track myself on time because I want to be respectful of your time. My intention is that
Tim, this is seed round, not seed round.
Oh, seed.
Yeah, that's how I also heard. I was like,
Seed round? What do you got? Seed round? You're an accelerator for a seed round? Sorry. Believe me, I'm way smarter than I seem. I'm way smarter than I'm actually seem. Okay, got it. Seed round. Perfect. So my intention is to make this, I've given this presentation many, many times. And I'm super comfortable going through it, and I'm also super comfortable going to points in it that are relevant as we're going through it. And if we get through all the pages, we will. If not, that's okay too. But my intention is to also have it be conversational. So if you have any questions about things that you've tried that haven't worked, or my perspective on things, I'm happy to share those, okay?
Tim, would
Yeah.
you like the questions to come at the end?
No.
Or after each section?
They can come anytime you guys have them. Anytime, and on just about any topic. Well, related to startups, of course, not about like what car I drive, right, that kind of stuff. But which is a Prius, by the way, just so you know. But I think what's that?
What color?
Blue.
Stop there.
Blue. And I stopped at In-N-Out on the way here, so there's an In-N-Out bag in it too. But no, I'm happy to take questions at any time during it. And I'm just going to tell you a quick story to start out. This is almost 20 years ago. I met this guy. His name is Daniel James. He now actually works at Facebook on their virtual reality work. But I had met him at a kind of a stuffed shirt Silicon Valley event, and he's about as tall as I am, and weighs about 1/4 what I weigh. He's a Brit, big bushy hair. He had a 3-piece suit on, and he was telling me about this company they started. And his company was Yo-Ho-Ho Puzzle Pirates, and what it was a massively multiplayer online game targeted at men and women to play. And what it would do is you would use puzzling as a way to have duels and have crews and all that kind of stuff. Anyways, I met him. And at the event, as the event started, he stopped paying attention and started drawing circles around this book where he was drawing frames that he would turn into ultimately this game he was trying. And I went and met him at his loft, essentially, which was literally a loft of a bunch of programmers cutting code, gaming programmers. And he was about to give a presentation. He's like, here's my presentation. I'd never done a presentation before with regards to startups. And I figured out really quickly that I had a knack for it. That what my knack is the ability to take things that are complex, confusing, often very detail-oriented when you're in the middle of it, and be able to turn it into something that someone who is not in those details can understand it and make a reasonable decision based on it. He went on, presented, did very well. I was on the advisory board. The company ended up getting bought. It was a great story. And the way I look at what I do is, this is just this is a group of some of my clients that I've worked with over. That's the way that I think about it. I don't really think about doing my work from a logo perspective. I actually think about it the way that I do it from the effect that I make on people's lives. And these are some of the people that I've worked with over the time. And just very briefly, these are three of my clients. And the thing that I can do is cut through the details to get to the key message, because I get that you guys are in the details every day. And it is very difficult to step out of those details and explain what you do in a way that you haven't thought of before. You guys have trouble with that? Mm-hmm. You guys, yep, find yourself in the weeds? Yep, so that is a big piece of it. And here's the thing, right? So if you want to give a great investor presentation, right, and you decided, I'm going to go research how to give a great investor presentation. And so you go to Google and search this, right? You will get, bless you if you know who this person is, but you'll get 6 million results on Google about how to give a great investor presentation. And the point that I'm trying to make with you very briefly to start us out is that there is a ton of information about the way you can give an investor presentation. And has anybody ever searched to try and give what are the tips that you get? You say, these are the 10 points to cover, that kind of thing. You guys done that before?
Yep.
Well, this is incredible to me. This is actually from Forbes. Somebody wrote this. This is what you should put. It doesn't help. It just doesn't help because there's so much information out there. But what is very difficult to do is to make the mindset shift. And what I'm going to do for you today is give you some really practical tools and even show you some specific slides about how I've seen it done to make it work. Okay? So we're going to do a little quiz. Here's the first one. When someone says, will you please send me your presentation, and a potential investor, what is the typical response that you give them?
Yeah, honestly, I don't feel like sending.
You don't feel like sending it?
Yeah, because they misinterpret like what we send because the presentation goes with the story.
Yes.
And then,
So you have one that it's not like a leave behind. Got it.
Yeah.
Does anybody else have a different response? When someone says, hey, can you send me your presentation? Does anybody else have a different response?
Send an executive summary, not the presentation.
What's that?
Send an executive summary,
One-pager.
not a
So the
presentation.
executive summary. So I will tell you what the most common response I get from entrepreneurs when I say, will you send me your presentation?
Sure.
Sure, but it's which one?
PDF?
Because they usually have a folder with about 20 versions of the presentation, right? And it's like presentation V1.0, AP's comments, 11, 15, 18 V2 3.5, right? So what I get is each of you on your computer probably has a folder full of presentations, so it's quite frustrating. And so the idea is to hopefully get to one solid one that you can work with and then add things to. But let's ask a different question. What is one of the primary thoughts in an investor's mind when what's one of their primary thoughts?
Will
What
this
is it?
really make me money?
Yeah.
That it's when am I going to get my money out and at what multiple? And so if that is one of their, it's certainly being inspired, and I should have asked you this question. I should have, why didn't I, is that one of your thoughts on your mind when you like, what? Sure. Of course it is, right. So it is a clear point in the presentation is to give them something they can grab a hold of, get inspired by, and see there's a money-making opportunity. And I know that doesn't feel particularly rewarding, like personally, but that's what they're thinking. And the final sort of cut is, what is the objective? What do you guys, so if you go give a presentation to a group, let's say an angel group, what is the objective of the presentation?
Raise funds.
Raise funds, okay.
Get
And
the next meeting.
there it is. I should have brought something.
Sorry, we didn't hear that.
It's,
Get to the next meeting.
it's getting to the next meeting. I should have brought Snickers bars or something to throw out to reward people the answer.
Samosas.
What's that? Samosas, sure, I'll just throw samosas out, no problem. There we go.
Cookies.
There we go, cookies. Cookies. Cookies that I didn't buy are the gifts that you guys get for the thing. But or maybe I'll eat a cookie every time you guys get it right answer the presentation. That sound like fun?
You want some bananas also?
Throw out these monkeys.
Exactly. I'm okay with that. Because, so in my experience, if you're giving, remember, so let's dial back to what I said at the very beginning. If you're out there raising money for seed or angel or A stage presentations, it is crucial that you get it to be as understandable as possible to as many people as possible. And so it is my experience over the course of that time that the objective of a great investor presentation is to get as many people in the audience thinking to themselves, this is interesting enough to go to due diligence. And I'll say what I say to every one of the entrepreneurs I work with. It is my experience that that in a presentation of 3 minutes, 4 minutes, 10 minutes, what you want to let them know is there's a big problem or opportunity that we have a unique solution for, where there's obviously a big market, that we have a team that can do it, and that there is a clear exit path for you. If you can hit those 4 things, then you can continue the conversation. Do you agree with that? Yes, he agrees with that. Okay, got it. Has anybody heard that before? Have you guys sort of heard that as an approach before?
Yes.
Got it. So inside that, what you see is like there's not a whole lot of room for technical discussions, right? It's really getting to the point of it. And so so these are things. So one of the things that I do. Yes, go ahead.
Can I just say the 4 things?
Yes. So the first is there's a big problem or opportunity that you have a unique solution for, that you have a team that can do it, and that there is a clear path for monetization for the investors. So it seems sort of simple, but it is a little tricky, and I'm going to walk you through. I'm going to show you live slides from things that I've done, and happy to get feedback. Does anybody have any questions? So what I've done so far, one of the things that I do for the Band of Angels, that's one of the main groups I've worked with. I've worked for them for like 15 years. I spend an hour with any entrepreneur that wants to do it with me to prepare them for the presentations. And these are the things that I say to them to get them in the mindset to get ready to go out and give their presentation. Because if we just say those 4 things I just mentioned, it does 2 really important things. It puts a fence up. And inside the fence is the stuff you should say, and outside the fence is all the stuff that you don't need to say. Right? And that's what's crucial. Because if you start from the point of let's get the basics down and avoid some of the stuff that's not important, you've made a giant first step to giving a great presentation. So these are more mindset things. Does anybody have any questions about anything that I've said so far? Because when we go from here, we're going to pivot and we're going to talk more about these are the things that I see work well in presentations.
You can add a third layer. Should say, shouldn't say, and definitely don't say.
Definitely do not say. Right. Right.
So Tim, one question I had when I first heard you say the 4th point, you said exit path.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, do I need to be putting we can be acquired by X, Y, and Z this early in an angel stage? What did you mean by exit path path to the
Yep.
investor.
Do we
Got
need
it.
to call it out? Do we need to call it our sense of it?
Raising
Is
the
it
next
the question?
round is an exit for them. It may not be a liquid exit, but if their valuation gets reset.
What did you mean by it?
So
Yeah,
what I,
that's what it
what I
was.
meant, so it's my experience, what I meant by, and feel free to jump in, but it is my experience, what I meant by that is this. Most of the startups that I see have some target ideas of large customers or consumer bases that they're going after, that either the large target customers have people who are interested in them, or the consumer group that they're going after, they're companies that otherwise have interest in being in them. And I would say that you could divide them into two, maybe three groups, any startup. One group is a company that's so early that to be in any kind of M&A discussion is way ahead of the game. However, if you've started a company, it is my experience, and check me where I'm wrong, like I'm open to the idea of different perspectives. Most companies that I see that start because there's a hole in the market, and there's a way to go in there and create a defensible position where there is substantial growth opportunities, to the point at which there are some natural companies that would make sense that would be interested in participating in that growth. Now the thing is, if you say, I think Google's going to buy us, Google takes first meetings with everybody, right? So it's like, Google, but if it is my experience that in the first case, even if you're super early, if you've thought it through and can mention it, and I'll show you a place where I suggest companies mention it, and it's in the financials. If you show that you've thought it through, what it shows is to the professional investor, it's like, I understand where I exist in the marketplace, and I get that one of the key thoughts in your mind is, when am I going to get my money out and at what multiple? But you don't go in, this is my suggestion, you don't go in saying, we know we're a big sales opportunity, that's why we're starting this company. It's like, hey, listen, we think we have something special here, and we think we have a real opportunity to grow here, and therefore, we think that when that happens, when we capture that market that we think we're going to capture, this company will be interested in us. The second category is companies that already have momentum with certain customers and or strategic relationships that make sense. I think unless you're under NDA, I think you should mention that. Personally, I think you should mention it because it's a big step up from the other companies. Because remember, it's like, the other thing to remember is like with the angel groups that I work with, it's like they see hundreds of deals. Like they just literally see hundreds of deals. And when you're up there presenting, and you're down to the three that present for the band, you want to understand how do you differentiate yourself, and that is one of the points of differentiation.
Tim, sometimes companies place a specific restriction that you cannot use us in your marketing material.
Yeah.
But there are ways of masking it by saying, we've got this customer who's the world's largest search engine.
Yeah.
Anybody can guess who you're talking about.
Right.
So you
Ask
can
Jeeves,
imply
right?
so much.
Just kidding.
Alta Vista.
Alta Vista, yeah. Right, you can't say it without revealing it, but all I'm saying is, if one of the mindset shifts I can get to you as you're going out to give the presentations is that an investor is thinking to themselves, when am I going to get my money out and at what multiple? That's a big step. I get it, that's a big step. If the next question is, then how do I say it? Awesome, like you've made progress.
Yeah.
So I think it is worth mentioning. Shoot, I want to give you what I think are the key points to cover in the presentation. And are there any life science startups or medical device startups? Yes. Okay. So there is one on here. There's one on here that may not make sense for you, and there's one that should be on here that isn't on here, or it's 1.5. So basically, it's exactly what I said. Problem, solution, your competition, go to market, financials, and management team. For the life science company, the difference is usually there's some level of IP and data that's important, and also if there's any kind of regulatory approval path, that needs to be on there too. But these are the basic things. If you can get and I think that a 10-minute angel presentation, how many slides do you think a 10-minute angel presentation should have? How many? 5. Do I hear 20? Just kidding. I think 6 6 to 7 is sufficient. Because what I find is, even if you have 15, you're like, oh, I can get through it comfortably. Most of the time, by the end of that presentation, when I see the entrepreneurs, it's like they're getting off a Stairmaster because they haven't breathed the whole time, right? They just like power all the way through it. And what I'm going to give you another specific tip that I give all the entrepreneurs I talk to. If you are preparing for a 10-minute presentation, get your presentation down to 8 minutes. Because when you go up there, it will be 10 minutes. I'm gonna throw another suggestion in for you too. How many of you practiced your presentations? Okay, cool. Who do you practice it with?
Mirror, co-founder.
Okay, got it. The co-founder. Got it. That's perfect. That's a perfect answer. So the trivia question is, if you're in the weeds, who is the next closest person to you in the weeds?
Co-founder.
Exactly. So it's like, I will get, like, let me put it this way. So here's the thing. Getting past the technical jargon, it's hard. Like, so I'll have entrepreneurs go, oh, I practiced this presentation so much. Who'd you practice it with? My CTO. Like, no, your CTO is actually going to know it just as well as you do, and probably more technically than you do. And the truth is, like, any cardiologist here, any heart people? Okay, well, I'm going to make a joke about cardiologists. So like, I've worked with cardiologists and heart scientists before, right? And God bless them when they give a presentation. They have to say the words myocardial infarction. Does anybody know what a myocardial infarction is?
Heart attack.
It's a heart attack. Nobody grabs their heart and says, I'm having a myocardial infarction. They say I'm having a heart attack, right? And so the point I'm trying to make with you is, when you practice with someone who knows it very well, it's difficult to get out of those weeds and keep the things really simple here. And what I want to show you, I'm going to bump forward and show you. This is a problem and opportunity slide for a vascular anatomy company.
Wow.
Any comments about this slide?
Too much text.
Too much text.
Font size, yeah.
I don't understand.
Font size is very difficult.
The picture doesn't tell a story.
The picture doesn't tell a story. Tortuous vascular anatomy sounds like a character from a Star Wars movie, right? It's very technical in nature. So for those of you who are putting together your presentations, what you can see is, it's really clear when you see somebody else's where the challenges are. The challenge is, how do you see it in your own, right? So let's all agree that if you're putting a problem statement together, a lot of text in a picture to a group, again, let's go back, we're talking to a group that you need to make it as understandable as possible to as many people as possible. So that doesn't work. We got that one. I'm going to give you another one, which is actually a little trickier. So this is, his name's Paul Hung. He's a great CEO at Stanford. He has a solution to help people get earlier and more precise identification of post-cancer treatment recurrence of cancer. And this was the slide he was going to do to show people. And here's the thing about this. There is a picture, there's not much text, but I have no idea what this person's talking about. None. And so the challenge is, how do you get something that is very technical and scientific and make it understandable to people? And this is what I suggest for him, which is what he used, and he raised $5 million. So let me stop for a second. If you ever meet a pitch coach who guarantees you by working with him or her, they will raise you money, I would suggest not working with that person, because that's not a fair commitment to make to somebody. A fair commitment you can make to an entrepreneur is, I will make your pitch understandable and compelling to the audience you're trying to speak to. So what I did with him was, here is what the current technology is. And this is time after the treatment, the risk goes up. The cancer signals in the blood have to be really high to get them. These are a bunch of companies that have been either focused on or investing in the ability to go down that curve. There's a lot of venture value. He is way down here. He substantially improves the ability to catch it earlier on. And there's tremendous venture value. It's super simple. Anybody can understand it. You know what the benefit is of what they do, and you don't need a PhD to be able to understand it. Does that make sense? Any yes?
I have a question on this slide. Normally, whenever you are presenting something, right, the wisdom is like put your company on the top right corner,
Yes.
right? But whereas this one is reversed.
So that's awesome. Somebody asked me that same question. So you could easily flip the slide and make yourself up in the upper right-hand corner. That is a technique that you can use. What we liked about this is it was closer to the lower risk line, and so to flip it was a little unusual for us. But you're right, we could have done that and maybe done it better. Make sense? Okay, does anybody have any questions? So what I'll tell you about is the problem and opportunity slide of your presentation is by far the most difficult slide of your presentation, because it's your challenge to explain what you do in as clear and compelling way as possible. And most of you, since you're technical and engineers, you're going to default to something that's more technical. And if somebody's not technical or not an engineer, you're going to get lost. They're going to get lost. And the key is when the train leaves the station, at the beginning of the presentation, you want as many people understanding it as possible. Because as soon as they stop understanding it, they will stop paying attention. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Does anybody have any? Yes.
Who should make the presentation, the CEO or the most articulate person in the group?
Okay. So this is my experience with that. So I have a few thoughts about that. The first, does everybody know who Tony Robbins is?
Yes.
Okay, got it. Here's the reality. I and none of you are or ever will be Tony Robbins. Never. So there's good news in that. It's like, you know that, right? And that you don't need to be Tony Robbins to be able to create an effective investor pitch. In fact, Paul, who I just showed you, Paul Hung, he is a soft-spoken, very introverted guy, but he gave a great presentation. So it is my experience that whether you are an introvert or an extrovert, as long as the presentation is understandable, the CEO should give the presentation, period. The only trick is if it's an ESL situation, to a point at which the accent is so thick that investors can't understand what the person is saying, then I do suggest considering putting someone else up there who is on the high level of the management team who doesn't have as thick of an accent. But here's the thing, and we're going to watch this in the Stanford video later. This is my experience. With a compelling and understandable pitch, you burst through a lot of the problems of accents and introvert versus extrovert. You just burst through a lot of those things because it is amazing what happens when someone is confident in what they're saying. They don't suddenly become Tony Robbins, but they do become. Have you guys had that experience where suddenly it's like, oh my God, I can say this in a new way? Has anybody had that experience? Mm-hmm. Yeah? Yes, you've had that experience?
Yeah.
Where you, and what happened? Like what was the?
No, when I was seeing all the speeches, I don't know, I
Yeah.
think like some speeches, like I could say something different.
Right.
In fact, when I see my own video, sometimes I feel
That helps, right? You see your video, and so the one thing I'll say is that if the CEO doesn't give a presentation, particularly to an angel group, I wonder why the CEO isn't giving the presentation. There may be scheduling reasons. Like I had a company where they got selected for Shark Tank, and so they went on Shark Tank. The CEO went on Shark Tank, and the next person in line presented. But, anyway, so any other questions about? Yes.
Just one more. I think I can speak for all of us when I
Awesome.
say that the need that you discuss for simplifying your problem
Continue. I
statement
think
in your
another
pitch
few
Yeah.
seconds.
is of the utmost.
Yeah.
It really resonates
Crucial.
with us.
Yeah.
My question is sort of for that rare breed that does exist in Silicon Valley, there are VCs like Gradient Ventures coming out of Google.
Yeah.
Who have like double the number of PhDs that most of us
Totally
do.
get it.
And would a dumbified, simplified presentation impress them also? They'd be like, you know, I get everything that you're talking
Totally get
about.
it.
Yeah.
So, great question. So here's my really specific suggestion on that. Go in prepared to discuss at a level that is widely understandable. But if you're in a meeting room with a group of execs and they're venture, like let me just say something. I have the utmost confidence that if I asked any one of you to describe technically what do you do that's interesting, you guys could hit the ground running and become almost Tony Robbins, right? Because you're super comfortable when it comes to talking about things technically. I actually made a mistake recently for the Life Science Angels where I counseled an entrepreneur to spend the first couple minutes talking about something, kinase inhibitors, which I thought was complex, but to a group of life science investors, they all know what that means. So I didn't think that through. I didn't think the audience through well enough. So the question, what's underneath your question is, how do I properly establish credibility and how do I not lose it, right? And so what I find is, in a presentation, if you know it beforehand or when you walk in and you check in to find out, you can pivot and make a different approach to the presentation. Yes.
And I think the other common follow-up to that is large group audience versus a round table.
Right.
Right, with the round table, the pivots are easy. With the large group, you want to, like you said, get as many people on the train and keep them with you.
Right.
So I think there's a balance there.
Here's my experience. I'll throw like another really specific. If you're going to go out and raise money from angel groups, here's my experience with angel groups. Inevitably, if you give up and give a presentation on that includes blockchain or is a transportation thing or whatever it is, if you give a group presentation to 30 investors, there's always 2 or 3 investors who really understand that space, and inevitably they will get you during they will ask you questions during Q&A. So you will have the opportunity to have that. But the other 27 investors that you want to keep engaged, you got to keep it as understandable as possible. And the truth is, you usually only have about 10 minutes to talk to them anyways. You got to keep it quick. That makes sense?
Yep.
You guys have any other questions about that?
What we do is for our demo day, we have the 4-minute pitch. And then there's a side room where all these guys set up. So the interested investors go out to that side room and then pin them down in detail. So the whole audience doesn't get exposed to their flaws.
Man, are you asking me a question or pointing out?
I'm just saying,
Yeah.
this is how we arrange it.
Got it. So who are the investors?
We had about over 60 VCs. He knows, he's the investor relations.
All kinds, early stage, Series A types.
Got it. And do the people that end up finding them in the side rooms tend to be ones that know the space?
Or they're interested to know more.
Got
which wasn't covered in 3 minutes.
Got it. Got it. So the thing is
Pitching is for a full meeting.
so the thing is that what I find, were you going to say something?
What is the typical time for a pitch according to you? 3 minutes, 4 minutes, 10 minutes? What is the?
Oh, so
Yes.
typical angel presentation should be 10 minutes. But here's the deal. This is my experience in working with all the CEOs I've worked with. If you can put together a really sharp 10-minute presentation that does all the things we talked about, what happens is you have this change where in 1 minute you can say it way better than you could say it before. That is my experience with it. That suddenly when you give a clear 10-minute presentation, you now can give a 1-minute pitch, 1-minute elevator pitch to somebody, and it turns into not just investors. Suddenly you can talk to potential employees differently. You can talk to partners differently. You can talk to anybody differently. That's my experience with it. So I think that if you shoot for that, you're in a good space. I'm going to show you another before slide, but it's a fashion company, right? At least I'm not a fashion company, but I don't think anybody's a fashion company, but it's useful. This company I just worked with, they actually won a big competition for investment in Phoenix. But if you see it, it's like same things, right? Lots of text. And it's like, you know those eye tests where the text start getting smaller and smaller? It's like each line, it's like you got to hold one eye. Can you read that last line? Like, what can you do? It's like, okay, we'll give you a license. And so what I did with her is the idea was to show what does a woman who's dressed in fashion look like today, and what does she think the woman who's fashionable in business will look like tomorrow. Forget about whether you agree with this, but the point is, given the before and after is a really powerful way to think about your businesses. That's what I want you to think about, because I'm almost guaranteeing, I've seen a lot of your companies. I went and looked for all your logos. I couldn't find them all. But I've seen a lot of what your companies do, and I'm sure there's a way you could articulate it in a way to say, this is what life looks like before, and this is what life looks like after you do the work with you. So I want to move on to the solution. Does anybody have any questions? Yes.
Yeah, so there's a difference between a 10-minute pitch or a 4-minute pitch versus they call you for an interview in 1 hour, right?
Yeah.
The presentation and the content would be completely different, right? In one case, you would be pretty much high level, just making sure you get to the next level. When you go to the next interview or next meeting, it's going to be
Oh yeah, so when you go,
detail.
yeah, so when you get to the next, so this is my experience with raising angel money. If you get to the next meeting, that meeting is due diligence. And when due diligence, it can be a presentation, but what it mostly is you have a few issues that they're interested in. They want to see deeper into your technology. They want to understand your first couple customers a little bit better. They want to deep dive into your financials a little bit more and understand what your pricing strategy is and that kind of stuff. So that would be like due diligence questions as opposed to a presentation. But if the presentation itself is an hour, this is my argument, and other people feel differently about it, but this is the way I feel about it. If you are giving an hour presentation, I think your goal should be, this is what I think your goal should be, that within 15 to 20 minutes, it goes from a presentation into a conversation. Do you have any thoughts you want to share on that?
Yeah, this is true actually. I think just your comment around angel group, which is typically large, right? So 15, 20
Yeah.
people or so. You go to the next meeting, what will typically happen is you'll have 1 or 2 people from that group who will be really interested and will be lead for your company. Before you go to your next meeting, it's always good to have the discussion with those leads. Hey, given what I said, what was the feedback? Which point should I go further into? And just go deeper into those points in your next meeting. And as Tim is saying, after that, just have like a conversation.
Right. So like the band, for example, it's almost the exact mathematics you just said. For the band, you're usually 80 to almost maybe 90 people who see the presentation. 8 to 13 people go to due diligence, and you end up really dealing with like 3 or 4 people. But the point, I just want to show you something before we get too much into the solution. I just want to reemphasize that when I work with those companies at the band and I do that hour with them, we usually make one big impact, and the one big impact is usually I'm going to change the way you talk about the problem you solve. I'm going to give you a way to talk about that you've never thought of before, and that takes a lot of effort and time. But I want to show you one other slide, which is a solution slide, which is like before and after, because I'm trying to get you guys to think about it. You're presenting your companies in a new way, and this is a company that basically, like, there still are people who do P2P file sharing for music. Like, it's still huge around the world, and they are getting information about it. But you don't need to understand what they do, but you can see. This is what I like to call a. I affectionately call these slides the rental car agreement slides. There's like so much text on it, it's like somebody cut and paste the rental car agreement onto it. But what they did instead was, they did this, which was fair, like they can understand it and talk about how you get information from people to the fan base that you can then monetize. In their case, Taylor Swift was one of their first clients that they worked with through the platform, because you get information about who's listening to your stuff, where are they listening it to. In this case, the P2P file sharing. But you can see that the imagery is better, and my suggestion is imagery helps, right? Here's a great example, well, a good example of how images tell stories. Remember I said life before, life after? These are not two companies that are related. They're two different companies, but how many people have kids here? Okay, all right, got it. So, do you ever get frustrated with your kids? I certainly, okay.
Never.
No, never. I do get frustrated with my daughter now and again. Yes, I do. But you can see that's a frustrated mom. And then you can see here, solar panel farms. I think there was somebody who was in energy. I think there was someone who was in, yes, energy, got it. You can see a person walking around. You can just get it visually. Frustrated parent, person walking around. It doesn't matter what, all the investor knows is that people are happy when they use your solution, right? It's just that people are happy, right? And of course it's not the same parent, but whatever, it doesn't matter. And in the other case, it was a company that was using, it was an energy company that was using drones to help look over the solar panels rather than individuals. But it helps you see this thing. So I want to, let me see what time it is. Okay, 6:55 I'm supposed to be done, right?
Yes.
Oh. So I'm gonna move forward a little bit, because there are some things I want to show you. Competition is, cause, by the way, once you get past problem and solution, everything else is a business school exercise. You'll find everything else is a business school exercise. So this was an example. This is a competition slide. Does anybody have a competition slide that looks like this? Okay. Okay.
Data sheet.
Does anybody want to comment on this competition slide, knowing that some of your friends here in this cohort have competition slides that look like this?
Can't read it.
It's awesome. Right. It means something to somebody, but it's very difficult to read in an investor presentation.
Too many companies compete.
What's that?
Too many companies are competing.
And it's hard to tell which one is important, which one isn't. And so this is I'll just give you like, you won't be surprised when you say the upper, who's the someone who said the upper right hand corner? I can't remember. Oh, it was you, yeah. So you won't be surprised that I frame all the competitions to put you in your upper right hand corner. Here's a few specific tips I can give you when you're doing competition. Point number one, you own the narrative. You own it. And so if you say you're effective, effective can mean whatever you want it to mean. You just got to tell them, right? And if you say you're, not personally simple, but your solution is simple, right? You tell them why it's simple. And what happens is your competition ends up going around here and you end up here. And the thing is, what my experience is, when you say we are, we're effective because our solution takes care of many issues and the other solutions only take care of one of the issues, and you gotta like cobble things together. And our solution can be run by someone who doesn't have to have a PhD, or by someone who doesn't need, you don't need to hire a contractor to do it. It's like, we don't need engineering resources, anybody can do this. And what my experience is, it should link back to the problem and solution statement you set up. Because you're saying, this is how we're different. And I'll give you a really simple way that I advise companies to think about it. What I say to them is, who's the buyer of your solution? Like what person in the organization?
The shipping company, and the truck drivers.
It's a shipping company, but so is it a software?
Yes.
Got it. So is it somebody in the shipping department of the company who would
be using it? Yes.
Got it. So and maybe it's a CFO you talk to, or somebody like that to talk to sell to.
We have talked to the CFOs and mostly the COOs.
COOs, perfect. COOs, guys, yeah. Perfect. So the COOs. So what I tell the companies I work with is, put yourself in the shoes of that COO. And here's the three things. They have the way they're doing it currently, they have one of your competitors, and they have your solution in front of you. Question is, why do they choose you? Think about it that basically. Because the moment you start talking about it from your customer's perspective, it starts to become a whole lot easier. And I cannot tell you how many entrepreneurs I work with who tell me, if you sit me down with a customer, I will rock it. But if you sit me down with an investor, it is hard. But the thing is they speak the same language. At the base level, they speak the same language. It just so happens that when you're talking with a customer, there's probably a few things you can do really quickly to establish your credibility with them, that you have a solution that's different. But then you get into a sales conversation or a technical conversation that's just different than what you experience with the investors. So I'm going to move forward from this. We already talked about that. This is just an example of one of the companies I work with. Yeah.
I'm not sure I understood what you were saying when you said the investors speak the same language as the customers. Because my personal experience has been that I get a lot more friendly conversations and better conversations with the customers than with the investors.
Because, so it is my experience that what kind of company do you have?
Security, enterprise.
Security. I'm sorry?
Enterprise.
Enterprise security.
Are those converted customers or they just stopped and gave?
Well, we're too early stage, so
That's okay. That's okay. So if you have an enterprise security company, my bet is, in most cases, an enterprise security company gives some degree of comfort to an executive at the company who has a problem that can be pretty easily identifiable. Like, oh, if I don't have this, this is the kind of thing that happens. And it's a big problem that I don't have a good solution for. And that if I had something that actually did it, I would be interested in it because there's no solution like it on the market and I'm at risk right now. And there are problems like that in all kinds of companies. That's a language that the customer speaks and the investor speaks. Where they diverge is the customer will say, okay, well, tell me exactly how you do it. Tell me the technical underneath of what thing you saw. That's the part where you're going to lose a bunch of the entrepreneurs. But if you can tell them, listen, there are COOs or there are heads of IT or whatever it is, like customer service or whoever it is, what keeps them up at night is the fact that they don't have a good solution for this basic problem that they're solving or this complex problem that they're facing, and they realize there is value in it. And if you get in there and establish yourself with a competitive advantage in that market, it's gigantic, and there's an opportunity for it. So I will tell you one suggestion I've made to companies, and over my 20 years, I think 7 of them have taken this suggestion. I have suggested that companies bring customers to presentations because the customer isn't that great necessarily in the presentation, but where the customer is phenomenal is in Q&A. They won't always do it, but every time I've seen a customer do it, or a company do it, it has worked. Yes?
And how do we handle the profit margins and all those questions if the customer is there?
Well, carefully is my suggestion. So one of the parts of the conversation when I'm saying you should bring a customer is having a little conversation about how much does the customer know about you, how much do you want the customer to know about you, that kind of thing. Like, yeah, go ahead.
After you.
Oh, that's it.
One of my observations was when I'm doing the sales and marketing too, right? Sometimes, to flip it around, right? Sometimes the customer who is not understanding the big picture, however the so-called white-collar investors do.
Yeah.
If I'm telling the industry is short by 175,000 truck drivers over the next few years, the customer will say, no, I'm good. I have my few truck drivers and all, and my life is good. I just travel every week from McAllen, Texas to Los Angeles and back and forth, right? But we are disrupting it in a big way, and that's a message that probably rhyme well with the investors than with some of the small-time customers that we are probably dealing with.
Right. So you do have that subtlety sometimes. Yeah. The one thing I'll say about customers, and the truth is, most good investors, if you have customers, they're going to want to, if they're in due diligence, they're going to want to talk to at least one of them. And so bringing them kind of shortchanged it. I want to.
So when you said presentations, you can take them to the investor itself?
I have advised companies take them to the angel presentations.
Is that allowed, Manish?
You got to get approval beforehand, and they need coaching. But the thing I want you to understand is, the customers love it. It's like a shot to them. You know what I'm saying? It's like you get in front of all these, rich people, and talk about how awesome you are and how innovative you are as a leader at a company. I want to touch on a couple other things. I have to.
One thing helps.
In any event, most of the investors will do reference checks with their customers. Yeah. So you have
They're going to do
time and prep
exactly
them for that.
And so what happens is it's like due diligence happens right in front of you. And if you have the right customer who supports your story, it is so powerful.
Yeah.
It's every time I've seen somebody do it, it has worked. So
where the customer will allow it, if they've given you testimonials, that's a magic card. Provided they allow you to use it.
Right.
Right. And that's when it comes to the fact that are you really dealing with the executive level, or somebody who's not the decision maker in the organization, because we'll need permission from the company's representative for us to use some of those logos.
See your terms, whatever contract you signed.
Yeah.
Sure.
Just the fact that a customer took time out of their busy day to come out to your presentation is big enough to begin with. And
Yeah,
then you
I
move
mean,
up
if you
from
can get
there.
a customer out there, at least ask. It's worth asking. But they need, here's the deal, they need to be coached, they need to know what they're going into, and they need to be on point with what you're saying. They can't, you can't like say, oh, we're effective and simple, and then you get up there and say, it was a pain in the ass to implement this solution. You know what I'm saying? Like, you don't want that to happen. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yes.
Maybe like a Skype call or just do a phone call with the customer.
So in due diligence, Skype, I wouldn't suggest a Skype call during an investor presentation. That'd be kind of strange. Yeah, I don't know. I can conceive that. But yes, you can do a Skype call during in due diligence. Now I want to check in. So it is time to. I didn't realize there'd be this much dialogue, and so I want to check in with you to ask, say, what do you want me to do?
Another 10 minutes.
Another 10 minutes. Got it. So then I'm gonna skip through some stuff. I want to talk about something near and dear to my heart. So financials. So I am apparently an ex-Wharton MBA, an actual Wharton MBA. I am an actual Wharton MBA, and I spent half my career in finance and half my career in sales and business development. But with financials, there's a few thoughts about it. But the one I want to start with is the last one. There is only one thing you know with 100% certainty about financial projections. One and only one thing about future financial projections with 100% certainty. What is it?
It's projection.
It's what?
It is a projection.
Right, but what does that mean?
It's not going to come
They're,
true.
who just said they're wrong? That's right. Every number's wrong. Every number's wrong. And so I have a piece of earnest advice for you, particularly if you're a new startup. Putting a ton of time to build an investment bank level model for it is not worth your time. It isn't worth your time. What is worth your time is putting together something that's super simple, that has levers for what's important about your pricing, and that just so you can move those things. Because there's a few things like, first of all, what they care most about if you're an early stage entrepreneur, you have to be able to manage cash. Right? Cash. Got to be able to manage cash. And you got to have a path to say, this is how we're going to go to the market with our product and make the kind of money to grow as a company. And you want to talk to, like when you talk about financials, you want to talk, particularly if you're in due diligence, you want to talk to them in a way that says, even if we're 30% short on our projections, we still have a runway that takes us to this into our next financing events we have. I want to show you what I suggest companies do for a financial slide in their presentation. This is for an angel presentation, okay? Because actually I'll show you this. This is actual presentation that I saw. Does anybody have a slide in their presentation that looks like this? Okay, some people do. Does anybody who doesn't have a slide in their presentation that looks like that want to comment on that without hurting their feelings?
Again, it's too complex.
What's that?
It's too complex to see.
It's complex.
Nothing pops out.
Nothing pops out. It's very difficult to read. Here's my experience with this, by the way. If you put up something in an angel stage presentation, for example, that has expenses in it, inevitably you're going to have ex-CFO who's going to start talking to you about why is your contractor expense so unusually high in the third year of operations. That's like the last piece of the conversation you want to be having. You know what I mean? It's like you want them talking about your pricing model, because the thing is, if you're a software company, you will not have Safeway level margins. The expectation is that you have 50 or whatever % margin it is. So the point that I make to the entrepreneurs who present is, you want to cover 3 key things in a financial slide, particularly in a 10-minute presentation. You want to tell them, what's your revenue ramp? And by the way, whatever you put, they're going to haircut it 50% anyways. And way too often I hear entrepreneurs say, how many in your financial slides have conservative financial projections? Yes. my earnest advice to you
Double.
is
Double.
don't do it.
Double.
Don't get up there and say these are conservative. It doesn't make any sense to me. Why? Because the truth is, like, if you put something up there that's aggressive, they're going to cut it. That's okay. But what happens is if you put up something conservative and they cut that, then it's like, so talk to them about the revenue growth
Double.
with what your business model is. Okay? Basic. Second, where are you going to use your funds? Where am I going to deploy their funds? And more often than not, in angel presentations, they devote it towards marketing and sales, hiring key people, and product management. That's what it is. And there's other ones. There's the regulatory consulting, or there's, you know, other types of. The key is whatever you put in the use of funds, there needs to be a narrative around why you're spending the money that way. And then the final one, this is asked earlier. I actually suggest putting actual logos in the presentation of who you think might acquire you. And oftentimes it's like, well, it might be a company that does this, but it also might be a company that's completely different than that one, but still is interested in getting into this business. And the way I suggest you say it is you say, companies like Google or Amazon, whoever it is, who bought this company, here's an exit in this space, or like this space, in the last few years. Here's a few exits. Sometimes entrepreneurs actually have an exit slide where they show exits that have happened in the last 4 or 5 years, because it gives the investor a degree of comfort that there is activity in that thing. So,
one question on this slide.
yes.
Here you're talking about use of funds, but there is no information about how much you are asking.
Correct. So there is a next slide that I don't have in this particular presentation where I suggest that you specifically line out what the deal is. I'm raising $500,000 on this cap at this discount to the next round, whatever it is. Like, you actually just give them the basics on that stuff. One other thing I want to share with you. Whoever the presenter is, it's like, you gotta like, you have to be like almost emotionally and I don't know what the right word is. Like, you just gotta be like self-aware, like really aware of who you are and how you thrive. Because some entrepreneurs with this level of information can remember everything they're supposed to say, and some entrepreneurs can't. They need things, they need more information in here about it to remember to say those things. And so you have to make that determination to say, what do I absolutely need to have in here as text hooks so I don't forget to say it, so that when I look at the slide, I'll remember to say it. Does that make sense? Because some people, you can put up 2 pictures and they can give a minute and a half on the slide and hit all the major points. And some people need the text to be on the slide. So, I'm about 9 minutes. Yes?
So here you have the number of customers in year 1 to 4, and the annual revenue, should it show numbers or just a bar?
Oh, so what I did for this slide, like, good point. So these things are not here. What I had on top of these things were revenue numbers. You can actually see the revenue numbers. Let me just see if I have any final pieces to give you before we. I guess I'm almost done. And actually,
the enforcer.
Yeah, the enforcer. Okay, all right, done. So I'll stop here. Are there any other final questions? I'm sorry I wasn't more on time. I apologize. Okay, is there any other final questions you want to ask me before we get into the presentation?
You're doing a before and after for this one, right?
I have a before and after for this one. This is the before. You know what? I can't tell you how many team slides come out that either, like, literally it's again the rental car agreement. This is the after. This is way better. Or they put up 12 people on the slide because they think that makes them look better. You don't need to do that. You need to identify the key people, and usually it's the CEO, the person who built the product, and if you have it, the person is going to go out and sell it. And if you have an advisor who's well connected in one way or another, mention that too. So I appreciate all of your attention and your questions. I'm going to just slip forward to, that is my contact information.
What's Agapet?
Agape is, so first of all, I should tell you, I do my business almost entirely and only on referral, but I'm here. Agape is, and so you can see I don't have like the flashy marketing stuff. Agape is unconditional love in Greek.
Oh, very nice.
And TT is my, Tim Taylor, that's my.
Got it.
Yep, got it. So you can contact me here. I'm happy to answer questions from you guys if you contact me directly. And I can talk to you about how I work if you're interested in talking about that. And with that, I think I'm done unless there's any final questions.
No, you're not done, you will be.
I know that, yeah, I'm done with my part, right?
Very nice, thank you.
Thank you.
Kumar, you want to stop and restart?
What?
Yeah.
Huh?
That will be a
No, no.
long video.
Do a quick bio break.
You do a bio break? Or?
Yeah, just
There's only one
stop and
bathroom.
restart with another one.